It's GrokTALK. Welcome back. We're still listening to music, kind of hanging out. Skip's out searching for trouble. Turn that down a bit. Just wanted to let you know we hadn't disappeared. We are still here at Liberty Forum. And I'm stepping on chords. Not the traditional setup. Mike Rogers is due to join us sometime today, hopefully within the next 2 hours or so. GrokTALK is brought to you by the bloggers at GrokTALK.com. Normal show time is Saturday morning from 9 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. Typically broadcast from the CNHT studios in beautiful Concord, New Hampshire, 8 North Main Street. Looking forward to having some presidential hopeful candidates on the program in the weeks and or months to come. Sure, hop in. Grab a headset. I gotta turn you up. I gotta figure out which microphone you're on there. Try that one.
I'm here.
You are here. Okay. Can you hear yourself okay?
Yeah, I can hear myself.
Okay, good. Awesome. Alvin, welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
We're still running a little music in the background. I'm waiting for Skip to get back, and oh, there he is. He's right over there. I see him through the glass. Hi. Yes, we're broadcasting, bringing in all the people and guests and everything else. So, come on in. We are on the air, and Alvin's joined us, and you are going to go wander about. Okay, have fun wandering about. Matt, how you doing? Steve McDonald. As we put in more people, let's keep turning the lights back on so you actually be able to see. That looks much better. At some point or other. Okay, you should be all set, Matt.
Check, check.
And we just need Skip. And he's here, and I can turn this music off. It's been running for 15 minutes.
Pretty groovy.
Yeah, well, I just threw a bunch of stuff, you know. It's the royalty-free music.
Okay, that's going. That's
35% of my fiber. Like I care. I really don't. But anyway. All right. We ready?
We are ready.
Awesome. Let's go.
We are GrokTALK.com. And we've got the levels up. We got everything going. The camera's going. And we got people here sitting here.
I got a tweet. And
GrokTALK, a production of GrokTALK.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site. A production of GrokTALK is a production of GrokTALK.com. Normally we're at CNHT, which is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, but we are here live at Liberty Forum at the Radisson in Manchester, New Hampshire. And we have a couple of folks that are willing to talk with us, and we appreciate that. Matt is here. He is diametrically opposed to me on a couple of issues, but we respect each other, we like each other, and found him wandering the halls, and he agreed to come on in. And Alvin is here as well, and we wanted to once again we want to say thank you for your generous donation. It will get us another headset, so now we get to have more people sitting around the table and talking quite a bit more. And you've been running around Liberty Forum. You have as well. You said, after this, I'm going to go home and get a nap. So, Alan, since you were here first, what's been your impression so far?
Well, I kind of like it. It's been quite a number of interesting speakers or panel discussions. A couple of them have been overlapping, so I didn't get to see both of what I wanted because they were at the same time. But that happens to everybody, I guess. I'm not the only one who's mentioned that comment. But just in general, hearing what's going on around New Hampshire and the people who are involved in it, what's happening with the legislation, some of the hot ticket items that have been coming up that either have gone through or haven't gone through the legislature, and just interesting things like that.
Now, are you? I don't. Since we haven't met that much, do you consider yourself an activist? Do you really get into this stuff, or are you just more of a more serious citizen than most others?
I would say more citizen than others.
Okay.
I haven't really gotten into the activism per se, but I do make sure that I try to find out all the issues. I vote every time that there's an election, so it's things like that.
And other than, I asked you this question before, but what drew you to Liberty Forum in the first place? Other than I can't get to the seminars I want to because they're both at the same time.
I've been to several of the Liberty Forums, and as part of the Free State Project, so I've been familiar with the forums, and it just happened to be. I don't get to them all, but I got here this year. So
now, are you a native New Hampshireite, or are you a
No.
Free Stater, or just somebody who happened to move to New Hampshire?
Free State.
Oh, very good.
I moved from Massachusetts,
What part?
western part, Westfield.
Okay, because I grew up in Brockton, then moved to Boston for 7 years and went to school, and ended up here in New Hampshire for a job, and then I fell in love with the whole shtick here, and I mean that in a nice way, and the live free or die part, and then once I became an empty nester, I became much more of an activist, and really, I believe, as I've told a number of people, when people move here for the Free State Project, because of a search for liberty, I keep saying, come on in, because we certainly need the help in a lot of different ways. So is there anything in particular about the Free State Project that said, okay, I do need to make that move here?
I don't know that there was any one single item. So it's just...
the general impression was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. That always works. And we also have Mr. Matt with us, and I want to say thanks for coming in. And now, are you a Free State Project member as well?
I am, Skip. I'm a Free State Project participant. I moved here from Kentucky in 2006. Not a lot of people know that. I don't really talk about it all that much. I kind of hit the ground running in Concord. Was the first Free State Project participant to register as a lobbyist, actually. And
Wow.
Been trying to convince the state legislature to reform marijuana laws since 2007 with mixed results. And here we are today.
So you are certainly an activist, you being a lobbyist, and you and I have had our debates on this topic before. We have opposing viewpoints, but I think that it's very clear to say we do respect each other.
Absolutely.
And I always enjoy talking with you about it.
Likewise.
Yeah. So what are the bills that you're following? Because obviously you have a vested interest in seeing what's going up in Concord.
Sure. So there was a bill that voted out of committee last week. The Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee voted 12-3 to approve House Bill 618, which would simply reduce the penalty for possessing small amounts of marijuana, aka decriminalization. The other 5 New England states have already done similar things. It's not a criminal offense to possess a small amount in any New England state except New Hampshire at this point. So this is a bill that would make a half ounce or less a violation. It'd be punishable by $100 for a first offense, $200 for a second offense, $500 for third and subsequent offenses.
So it's more of a misdemeanor than a felony at this point.
Well, it's been a
Other
misdemeanor.
than just
the current penalty for possession of an ounce or less is a Class A misdemeanor, up to a year in jail, up to a $2,000 fine. Of course, we're not actually throwing people in jail for possessing small amounts of marijuana. That would be crazy. There are 100,000 plus regular marijuana users in New Hampshire. We don't have room for them in the jails. So what happens today is that a person gets arrested, they get prosecuted, and at the end of the day, after everybody spends a lot of time on this, court time and police time, they end up paying a fine and walking out of court. A person who doesn't get an attorney is likely to walk out of court with a misdemeanor on their record and have a criminal record that will follow them for life. A person who does spend a bunch of money on an attorney can almost certainly get that reduced to a violation and they'll walk out. So it's really kind of a two-tiered system of justice. If you can afford legal representation, a little bit of marijuana is no big deal. If you're a poor person who can't afford an attorney, might be a totally different story. So we see this as equal justice. We see this as limited police and law enforcement resources being spent on things that the public is actually concerned about, and recognizing that marijuana just isn't like heroin and methamphetamine and the prescriptions that people are dying from. There are some harms associated with marijuana use. In my view, they pale in comparison with the harms associated with alcohol, tobacco, and illegal drugs. So this is recognizing that it shouldn't be a crime, it should be a lesser offense, and it would be consistent with Article 18 of our New Hampshire Constitution, which says that all penalties ought to be proportioned to the nature of the offense.
Okay. What are the other bills that you're following right now?
There is another bill. There's not a legalization bill this year. There is a bill that would create a study commission to look at issues surrounding legalization, and that was also approved by the Criminal Justice Public Safety Committee in a similar vote, and both of those bills will be on the House floor Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Okay, what's the odds over and under?
Well, I don't know. DCRIM has actually passed the House in some form 5 times, dating back to 2008, and Governor Lynch always said it sends the wrong message to children, and that always shut down the entire discussion. The Senate has always refused to have a serious conversation about this. This year, I'm certain that they will be willing to have the conversation. I'm not certain that they'll be willing to pass it, but I'm more confident than ever.
Well, that's an improvement. I mean, considering how long you've been at this would be the first time they've really even seriously considered. I mean, I think that's correct, right?
That is absolutely correct. Okay. I mean, every bill, if it gets to the Senate, they have to have a public hearing. Right. But those public hearings have been tolerated by the senators. They have not wanted to engage.
They're not serious.
This issue. So,
do you think? Why do you think changed? Why do you think they're more amenable to it this year? Maybe.
Well, it's a number of things. Marijuana has been legalized by voters in 4 states, plus the District of Columbia. 19 states have passed some form of decriminalization. 23 states plus D.C. have medical marijuana in some form. The public opinion polls have shifted dramatically. It's majority support for legalization, where when I started doing this, it was 36% support for legalization back in 2007. Now we're up 20 points from there. And legislators aren't used to these massive shifts in public opinion. So there are a lot of them dipping their toes in the pond and trying to determine if it's warm enough to put their whole ankle in and that sort of thing. But, at least as far as decriminalization goes, there's very little opposition. The Granite State poll was 61% for, 24% against. And, I think when people understand that it's not legalization, that decrim doesn't lead to stores being put up and commercialization and things like that, it's just reducing the penalty. Then conservatives in particular, I think, become more comfortable with it. They see it as a limited government and constitutionally consistent reform, whereas medical marijuana involves some bureaucracy, and legalizing, regulating, and taxing is a whole other complicated thing that many libertarians.
I've always had a problem with that. I've never objected to medical marijuana. I don't have a problem with marijuana use in general. When you get the government involved with it, obviously they're going to screw it up, whatever it is. But I agree that the penalty problem, the way people are mistreated, the imbalance, the obvious imbalance that's built into the system. If you're going to You need to treat these people the same. You know, you shouldn't, and that's it. I mean, like you said, the cops' time, the judges' time, you know, court reporters' time, everybody who processes this. If it's a traffic ticket, treat it like a traffic ticket, you know? I mean, and just get it over with. Message sent, right? I mean...
That sounds good to me. I hope you'll call the governor and a few of these senators.
Well, I mean, I'll write about it. I'll
Good.
absolutely write about it. Because, I mean, and it is a path to less government.
I absolutely think decriminalization is a small government.
A couple of years ago, I wrote a post about, you know, the marijuana bills and stuff like that, and I said, look, my concern wasn't the marijuana; it was the state. It was the idea of taxing it. It was the idea of creating a regulatory agency or expanding a regulatory agency, and where that would go. Mm-hmm. You know, and I'm like, if your object is less government, this may not be the way to get there, because you're going to create more in the process, and that really concerned me, and I didn't want people to skip that part of the debate. Yeah. I got a lot of crap for that because they said you're against marijuana, but I never said that. You know,
right. You know, it's a similar line of thinking as far as casino gambling. It's like, why do I want to allow it? Because it's going to expand government. Because Governor Hassan has already said we're going to highly regulate it. Well, as soon as you say highly and regulated, that means there's more government in there.
Well, you know, we had Kirk Kevin on. We wanted, you know, poker, game of skill. Let people open poker rooms and stuff. You know, just let them do it. You know,
right?
Really.
Any thoughts, sir?
Only in that the marijuana, you know, well, we should probably back up. You know, a couple hundred years ago, if people used intoxicating stuff or stuff that would harm them, it only harmed them. There was no government funded health or anything like that to pick up the pieces. If it killed you, it killed you. If it crippled you, it crippled you. You ended up being crippled. Now, part of the problem is that if the marijuana harms you, harms a kid or something like that as he grows up, then it's a burden on the society.
Well, I think that's really where I come at too. You know, and this is where perhaps the libertarian leanings that I have come into more of the play. It's like, you know, if you're going to do this, don't make it my problem. If you're going to do this, don't make me pay for it. And the problem is here with this ginormous welfare state that we now find ourselves in, with the progressives having the mantra or one of their foundational relativistic principles is that there shall be no bad outcomes. We will mitigate any bad outcomes. And this has nothing to do just with marijuana, but in anything. That, in other words, they're trying to say, nobody can make a bad decision because we'll make it all better. But there's a cost to that. And I don't want to pay that cost. Because when you deny people failure, they don't learn in most cases. But at the same time, don't insert yourself into my family life by denying me the fruits of my labor to spend on my family, because I now have to take care of your family. It's one thing if I want to voluntarily decide to do that by giving to charity, but don't use the government as a way to mitigate those bad consequences. And Matt's looking at me like he's absolutely nuts.
I don't think you're nuts, Skip. I look at this issue and I think there's just a tremendous cost to what we're doing now. We know that marijuana is widely used and widely available across New Hampshire, and because we refuse to bring marijuana under our laws, it's all produced in an illicit market. Illicit drug dealers don't check IDs. They'll sell to anybody of any age. They may introduce people to substances that are truly harmful and dangerous. So we mentioned death and being crippled. Those are two outcomes that are not associated with marijuana. There's never been a fatal overdose with marijuana, and I don't know of it crippling anybody. So do we want it to be produced and sold in a regulated market similar to what we do with alcohol, or do we want to keep it in the hands of the cartels and the drug trafficking organizations? And beyond decrim, that's the next question. Yeah. And a lot of different views of what legalization could and should look like. And, you know.
It really comes down to, and this is something I've kind of let my hair down a little bit. You weren't here in the early part of the broadcast that we're doing here from Liberty Forum at the Radisson in Manchester. But this week, looking at the national picture, looking at local politics and all of that stuff, I keep thinking the rule of law is under extreme attack. My prime example is Congressman Luis Gutierrez of Illinois, who's just saying, I am glad that Chicago is a sanctuary city and therefore not cooperating with ICE authorities. And I never thought that I would ever hear a sitting congressman saying, we're breaking the law and glorifying in it. Now, and you and I have had this type of discussion before. There is the law, and if you decide to break the law, there is a consequence. Now, you're trying to change the law, and that's fine. That's what we do here in our republic. And I get part of your discussion point of, all right, look at all the people who we hurt because people are put into jail. Look at the families, yada, yada, yada. There is a cost to that as well. But there is a cost. Yes, there is a cost to following the rule of law. There's also a cost of not following the rule of law. At least I can say you're trying to change the rule of law to change that paradigm. And I'm okay with that. I may not agree with you on that, but that is your right to do that as a citizen. And I just go, I know some of the costs that we have now. What will be the unintended consequences later on? I don't know all of them. I don't think anybody does. We're starting to see some of that play out in Colorado, where some things are better, some things are not. You know, lots of people are going to say, "Hey, I'm getting a tax refund because of all the joints that are being smoked." That's one thing, but then there's other stuff that's going on as well. Homelessness is going up right now. They're seeing higher incidences of under the influence. Not that I'm an expert. I haven't delved into it that much. I'm a blogger reading as many posts as I can, fast as I can.
There's a lot of conflicting data coming out of Colorado for sure.
There is. So there's always the conservative part of me for an ordered society that goes, okay, is this change enhance an ordered society in which we can have liberty? Because I'm not of the idea that an anarchic society is a free society. That doesn't work for me.
Okay.
And what are the ramifications thereof?
Yeah, well, let's get beyond the anarchy and get back to decrim and away from Colorado. It's the argument against decrim for years has been that if we decriminalize in New Hampshire, teen use will skyrocket. People will be using marijuana more. It's going to have this massive impact. Every other state in New England has decriminalized marijuana. Maine did it in 1976, 38 years ago. Nobody's been arrested for simple possession and charged with a crime in Maine in my entire lifetime, Skip. They've had, since 1999, a medical marijuana law that is much more open and libertarian than anything we've contemplated here. Patients don't even have to register with the state in Maine. There are tens of thousands of patients who are either growing their own or using one of the 8 dispensaries in Maine. If medical marijuana or decrim led to problems, I think we would have seen them in Maine. There are 2 government surveys that are how we keep track of teen use rates and use rates generally. Teen use in Maine is lower than in New Hampshire, is the lowest in New England, in fact, and is in one of the surveys, it's under the national average. Where are the problems of allowing marijuana to be decriminalized? Now, it's very different than putting up 600 stores and having them advertised. That's a separate question. But as far as what should be the government's response to a marijuana user, is it arrest them and charge them with the crime, or is it write them a ticket? I think from a conservative perspective, from a liberal perspective, from a moderate perspective, from any perspective, it streamlines the process. It allows police to focus on things that we really care about.
Yeah. And then, of course, to just expand a little bit tangentially on Steve's line of thought, then we have California, which are now telling the licensed marijuana dealers, you will give away your marijuana, the 2%. Is it California or is it Washington? Which state is it that told them you will give 2% away of your production to poor people so they can have marijuana as well? I thought it was California.
It's not California because there's no state regulation of
Okay.
California's
Washington-
marijuana industry at all. I think it might be Washington.
It's West Coast somewhere out there.
I think Washington State might be the case.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, this is past regulation that I don't think is a great thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the details on that.
Yeah, they basically said if you're going to be licensed, you have to. It's sort of like hospitals here. You have to do charity work. Well,
Right.
this is charity
No,
marijuana.
it's similar. I mean, with the 4 nonprofit dispensaries that New Hampshire will have for medical marijuana, the law does require them to come up with some kind of a plan to make it available at an affordable cost for low-income people. It doesn't mean give it away to poor people, but medical insurance does not cover anything to do with medical marijuana. So we've created this system. It's heavily regulated. All of these fees and regulatory costs are going to be passed on to patients. It will all come out of patients' pocket. We have this very restrictive law that only allows people with very serious illnesses to qualify. So that means a very small number of customers for these dispensaries that have to pay these massive fees and overhead costs. So this is going to be a big expense for patients. I'm very concerned that the prices at dispensaries will be higher than illicit market prices, and that will suck for the whole program. So it's a very different question with medical person and seriously ill patients who already have all these medical bills, and then they have to pay $400 out of pocket for an ounce of cannabis on top of everything else they're paying. So anyway, I hear where you're coming from. We want to make it possible for low-income people with medical needs to have access.
All righty.
Not sure the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it certainly is a changing world, changing very fast. For some conservatives, it's changing too fast. And I think a lot of people are legitimately going, okay, because it's not just that. It's in a lot of different areas as well. But, that is life. That is, what it is. And the libertarian side says, okay, that's fine. And just don't make it cost me anything.
Right. Well, Skip, for better or worse, I can pretty much assure you that New Hampshire will be one of the last, if not the last, states in New England to legalize marijuana. Massachusetts and Maine will very likely do it via ballot initiative in November 2016. Vermont's legislature's talking about it very seriously. Rhode Island's legislature is talking about it very seriously. So I think you and anybody else who has concerns are going to have opportunities to take tours in neighboring states if you want to before New Hampshire even is serious about moving forward. And the House passed a legalization bill. The Senate and the governor are not even close.
The bubbling cauldrons of democracy are 50 states.
Laboratories.
Well, sometimes more than just a laboratory. The mad scientists go, yeah, ha, 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 ha. But anyways, I know that you said that it was time for a nap, and if you've been going on, so I appreciate your time.
Well, you woke me up, but thanks.
Oh, good. We do try to do that. Sometimes we're even successful.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks for taking time to be with us.
Thank you guys. Take care.
12, 10. Okay.
All right.
Back to Elvin.
Yes.
I just wanted to follow up on one of the things you were talking about, the rule of law and everything. And people tend to forget that the basic law is the Constitution. Everything else goes from there. And it's not just a matter of, oh, yeah, we're nation of law, so we'll just write a new law. That's not the
You're absolutely
background there.
You're absolutely right. And as I've said on a number of occasions, it seems to be that the more I do this political blogging, the more conscious I become of what is that foundational law and where have we gone with the laws built on top of that. As we had Ian Underwood on earlier, who spoke at one of the gun bill testimony times, he said words either have meaning or they don't have any meaning at all, in reference to some of the meanings of Article 2A in the Second Amendment. And yes, he did kind of twist the minds of some of the legislators and going, do we have to think about this? But too many times we see laws being written outside of the Constitution, and they don't care. And that's a big problem. So do you have an answer? Do you have a remedy for us?
No, not until the people want to vote out the people who well, we had one state representative who said the Constitution is just a guideline. It's the courts that decide what's the law.
Oh, I actually can look that up because I've got that on a page I call Progressives in the Proper Role of Government. Let me look that up. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think it's D. Simone who was a Democrat turned a Republican. I think she may be a Democrat again, who said, yeah, it's just a guideline.
She was always a Democrat then.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Got a couple of those kicking around, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And we like to kick them around.
And I guess she forgot she swore the oath to uphold the Constitution and also signed a paper, because the legislators have to sign a document stating that they'll uphold the Constitution. So.
Yeah, and they don't. I think we've got that covered, don't we?
Yeah, and there was a movement here. Was it about a year and a half ago? Honor your oath, and a lot of and the press excoriated these people. Jack Kimball, former NHGOP chair, a number of other organizations who said, "What is wrong? What is so extreme about holding our elected representatives accountable to that oath?" I thought that's a perfectly valid thing to do, unless words don't mean anything anymore.
Well, there was also the Oath Keepers organization, which was trying to get any police or military people to follow the oath of office that they're in, which was to uphold the Constitution, and not necessarily any crazy orders that came down from on high.
And you're right. I am a former elected official. I did swear the oath, and I took it very seriously. But I think too many people see it as, oh, I just have to do this, and then I get to start doing my real job. And they don't take that oath. You're laughing, Steve.
Well, I'm laughing. That's
Why?
True. Oh, I'm just because you're right. That whole, I just got to get on with what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with this oath Constitution business. I wrote a post related kind of to this discussion at Watchdog Arena at Franklin Center and watchdog.org on the case of King versus Burwell, which is brought because it basically states that the law as written, Obamacare as written, does not allow the government to provide subsidies to people who sign up on a federal exchange. They have to sign up on a state exchange. So there's a lot of debate about what King v. Burwell will do to Obamacare, and I said, well, I don't really care about any of that stuff. I think it's about federal law as written. The law was written. The words mean something. The words said you can't do this. If you want to do that, you have to change the law, and you have to use the process. You have to use the legislature. You have to get the president to sign it, da-da-da-da-da. Obviously, that's not the way this president likes to do things. It's not the way a lot of presidents like to do things. This one's just the most recent and worst example that I can think of. But I wrote King v. Burwell is about federal laws written, not just this federal law, but every federal law, now or ever. If the law is not enforced as written, federal legislators will never be held to account for their laziness. If legislation does not mean what it says, and government men are free to reinterpret the meaning of federal laws to suit their current mood, then there is no law. And there isn't. I mean, you don't know. I mean, the speed limit says 35, but they pull you over for going 20. And then they say you can't do anything about it. Well, it's the same thing. The law has to mean something. Otherwise, you have no way to operate. Businesses can't operate. We already have that problem.
Right. Alvin, you remember correctly, the Constitution is a guideline. That was said by New Hampshire State Deborah DeSimone, who was a Republican when she said it. There was also this, that New Hampshire State Representative Susan Almy, Democrat, well, you don't get to decide what is constitutional, and I don't get to decide what is constitutional. The judiciary decides what is constitutional, which I think is absolutely ass backwards, because everybody's business is to say, is it constitutional or not? And if you are making laws for us, you should be determining whether or not this is constitutional. Otherwise, there's no limiting principle.
Right. The state reps should do their best diligence in making sure that they're complying with the Constitution. I realize there's going to be issues that come up that would be gray areas where you can't really be sure, and that's where the courts are going to have to make a decision if it becomes an issue. But, a lot of the stuff that they're doing, it's plain and simple in the Constitution. Are they allowed to do it or not?
Yeah, and of course, it isn't just elected officials, it's also appointed or employees of the state. For instance, former executive director of the Nashua, New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission, Kerry Deers, private property rights get in the way of good planning. Private property rights won't let us have the discussion.
Private property rights get in the way of socialism.
Yes, and Granite State Futures said anticipated barriers to their planning purposes. Anticipated barriers include New Hampshire's strong tradition of individual property rights and resultant resistance to planning and zoning. And you know something? It's that kind of attitude of, well, we're going to try to do as much as we can unless we get shut down by the courts. That's the process, the mind thought that says we're going to lose our rights because private property, that's one of the reasons we broke off from Britain, because private property rights were being abrogated. The Third Amendment, I think it's the third, quartering of soldiers in one's home is taking away your property rights. And these people just don't seem to, they don't want to get it. And that's even more dangerous.
And part of it, they don't see that it's going to actually happen to themselves.
Yeah, they're not going to suffer the consequences of their actions. And in a lot of cases, they put themselves into places or positions where they don't. The rest of us do, but they don't. But anyways, I think it's time for a little bit of a break here. So are we going to try the... once again, going to try the music. This ought to be interesting.
Okay, hang on a second. I got to make this fit the space. I'm in the middle of posting some pictures from this lovely day. Let me go back to that page.
Oh, you're already busy.
I'm always busy. That's what I've been doing. That's why if I'm quiet, I'm up to something. Okay, so let me get rid of all of these. Well, that music works, but that's not what I was looking for.
Oh.
I was going to do this. Nope, I'm not going to do that.
All right, I'm watching him play with his Jingle Box software.
See what happens.
Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North
Main.
Okay,
folks, we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
For all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTAK.